As we know, Course in Miracles is filled with almost an infinite amount of deep concepts. I'm going to be quoting from just one paragraph. It's chapter 2, section 5, called The Function of the Miracle Worker. And we're going to go through just 4 sentences of it. And I've got 2 drawings to try to back it up. Again, I work really hard on my drawings. Today I spent like 3 hours on these drawings. But I'm going to explain what these drawings are after I read it. I'm going to read it once, then we'll talk about the drawings, and then we'll read it again. Spirit is already perfect and does not require correction. The body does not exist except as a learning device for the mind. This learning device is not subject to errors of its own because it cannot create. It is obvious, then, that inducing the mind to give up its miscreations is the only application of creative ability that is truly meaningful. Now, there's a lot in there, okay? But to really grasp it, you just understand this simple drawing, okay? Really simple. Now, hopefully you can tell, based upon my brilliant artwork, that this is Michelangelo's David, okay? In stick figure form. Now, if you know Michelangelo's David, you can tell this is where he's holding the sling, yeah, right there. And I left it just, I think perfection in stick figure form, okay? Well, that is perfection, but where did Michelangelo's David come from? I mean, it's an amazing sculpture, right? Well, where did it come from? Well, it was inside a block of marble. That's how it started. And Michelangelo visualized something, and inside the block of marble, David was already there in its perfect form. The current David was already inside that block of marble, wasn't it? And so the perfection of the sculpture David was already in the block of marble. And so what did Michelangelo do? Now, this is obviously the hand of Michelangelo, right? Obviously. And he's chipping away, okay? And in order to get to David, he had to chip away all of the excess, all of the stuff around the perfection. And as he chipped it away, the perfection was revealed, and the rest of it was just garbage, okay? Perhaps he used it for something else, I don't know. But from the beginning, you had this block in which the perfection was already in there. And then if you chip away at it, you're just left with a bunch of pieces that can be discarded, and the perfection is left. Well, guess what? This is exactly what's happening to all of us. And this is essentially the point of Course in Miracles and what we all have to strive for. Now, what I drew here, the comparison is there's a perfection of spirit that's inside of you. Spirit is already perfect. I drew it in a way, after I was done with it, I was like, well, it looks like a crown. That's perfect. Because all of us were given the ability to be Christ conscious, okay? It's like fire. It's the fire of the Holy Spirit that's inside all of us. It is Christ, and it is perfect, and it was placed inside each one of us. Well, what happens? It's placed inside of each one of us, but it's also encased in the ego. What's holding it in place, if you will, is the body. And it's also the mind itself, which keeps us trapped based upon the way we look at the world through the lens of the ego. And at the root of all of us is this fire of the Christ. It's inside of all of us, every one of us, and it's the exact same inside of all of us. And yet, completely different, because this exterior is what we pay attention to so much, right? So what do we have to do? From the Course in Miracles perspective, what we have to do is chip away at all the ego casing. Remember in the introduction, we all have love as our divine inheritance. What can we do? We can help each other remove the barriers and the blocks to that awareness of that inheritance. Well, what are those barriers and what are those blocks? It's fear. It's the focus on physicality. It's division, separation, shame, doubt, impatience, resentment, ignorance, judgment, all of that garbage, okay? All of that layers of mind that has nothing to do with this. And every one of us has gotten afflicted by this. Everyone. You can't come here and not have this happen to you. You take on the idea of a physical body because it's in your face, right? And yet it's totally an illusion. And to dig deep into what we really are, to find the spirit, is to get past all that garbage. These are the blocks that the introduction is talking about. Now, I'm going to save this for last, this one other piece of garbage called superiority. I'm going to save that for last, okay? So let's go through that again. The idea of what's happening in these drawings, these words, spirit's already perfect. The Christ was placed inside of you. Okay? It isn't your ego. Every person in the world has it. Christians, Muslims, atheists, everyone does. Whatever word you call it, it doesn't matter. It's there, and it's perfect already. All you have to do is reveal it, okay? So many people doubt that about themselves, so therefore it's not, it doesn't surface. Are we good over there? Okay. The body does not exist, it's already perfect and does not require correction. How could you correct this? It's already perfect. The fact is we have to recognize that what we need to correct is our misunderstanding of what's going on here. There's nothing to correct with the Spirit. How did David itself, that's inside this marble, get corrected? It didn't get corrected. It got revealed, right? Never once did Michelangelo actually work on David. He only worked on revealing David, okay? And every time he chipped away to make David perfect, it was removing something to find what was perfect already. He never could work on David. The body does not exist except as a learning device for the mind. Now, these physical bodies are the exact same thing for the spirit that's trying to emerge. These bodies are communication devices, okay? What they are is very similar to your cell phone. The cell phone itself isn't doing any creating. What the cell phone is doing is the opportunity to communicate, right? The body itself isn't the point. The body is the vehicle through which the Spirit gets revealed inside of all of us. And you use it through all our various experiences, which leads to stuff like this. And then we have to peel the layers back, so to speak. Right? Because by the time we get interested in this, we're all buried by this. And that's the idea. The body, it doesn't exist. We've talked about this many times. The miracles is all about the illusion of things. This isn't actually physicality. It's spirituality, right? This is an energy body, and the spirit is energy encased inside of the energy. Jesus said in the Gospel of Thomas, it's light within light. There actually isn't any physicality. Now, only people who like Course in Miracles and related types of text like that idea. Most people in the world are like, what? Of course there's bodies. Let me kick you in the shin and I'll show you. Okay, whatever. It's all sensory illusion, okay? So the body doesn't exist except for as a learning device for the mind. This learning device is not subject to errors of its own. It wouldn't make any sense to blame the marble around David to be responsible for the creation. All it is in the way, if you think about it, right? It's not doing any creating. It is a block, though, and as you remove it, that helps set up the creation. Now think of all our various ego maladies, right? The various things that we have in the way. Each and every time you remove them, because this is what miracles is all about, every time you remove one of those barriers, one of those blocks to your awareness, you just got closer to the spirit creation. Once we get there, by the way, is where the real action happens, okay? But our journey, very singular, why the Buddha's last words, strive for your own liberation with diligence, why Jesus says not to judge anyone else because you have a log in your own eye. First, remove all of your barriers. Stop telling other people that they've got barriers, right? Your barrier is your judgment of others. We don't get there when we're just judging from the level of ego physicality. That's why the world is in such disarray. So embrace your adversities, which is why all the teachings are about that. Apostle Paul in particular, rejoice in your sufferings, because as you get past your layers and chip away at the block surrounding the spirit inside of you, you get closer and closer. And then you manifest the spirit. The body itself has no responsibility for the errors. This is why forgive them, they know what they do is an important thing. While no man shall boast. All of our egoism, all of it, is garbage ultimately. It's not the reason for creation. And yet, a bunch of people walking around thinking they're doing things. No, they're only doing things relative to their own ignorance. That's all of us. So it's not doing anything. It cannot create. The ego can't create. It just gets in the way. It is obvious. Now, I underline that because I think it's pretty funny. The way Miracles talks. It's obvious. I don't think it's obvious at all. It is hard work to get there. But once you get there, it is obvious. It's obvious that inducing the mind to give up its miscreations is the only application of creative ability. What does that mean? We have to come up with creative ways to get past our own egos. To induce in ourselves the idea of that this is a miscreation. And it's where I have superiority in here. Not only do none of us like these negative emotions, fear, shame, guilt, doubt, all that, it's all blocks. I mean, you can't create from that place particularly well. And we're not distributing good energy to each other either. You know, we're not helping each other rise up through our fame, our fear and our shame and our doubt and all of that. But we will through love much more effectively. That's how people feel better. And if all we're doing is reveling in this, we're never going to get there, okay? But if you get there and you start to have an awakening and you get past some of the ideas of division and you think you're special because of it, superiority, you just lost it. It's not special at all. Miracles emphasizes that too. None of us are special. We're just unique. Why are we unique? Because we have different packages. We're all put in different cases of marble, if you will, okay? We do look different, and we have different labels, for sure. But at root of all of us is the exact same thing. That exact same thing, as it gets revealed, becomes the best version of you. But the ego can't do that. And that's why religion gets so screwed up, because the ego's interpreting things. We get past that. That's why Jesus says, you have to die with me. He doesn't mean physically either. He does mean the ego, though. Why Paul says, I must decrease. No, that's John. I must decrease so he may increase. Why? Because I need the Spirit to show up inside of me just as you do. And it's the same thing. This is the point of unity. We all have the same thing. Of course, we're going to be different on the marble level. Okay? And so we end on the idea of the superiority because so many people think they're better than others. And if you think you're better than others, that's like a rose that bloomed in 1973 thinks it's better than the one that's going to bloom next week. Is it? It's just because you're further along, are you better than anyone? No. The spirit mind recognizes, oh, we've all got it, okay? We all have it. Everyone does. We're at different levels of development. And the ego jumps in and says, oh, but that person's an idiot because. Well, they might not have figured out the spirit within. But you judging them that way doesn't help either, okay? The only thing that works is that you get the spirit inside of you active. You spread the energy of it. And you come up with creative ways to help other people get past their ego blocks. Certainly arguing doesn't really help, not much, okay? So, perfection, which is what we started with, spirit is already perfect, and where we're headed towards perfection just happens to be in every single major religion. Dzogchen in Buddhism is the great perfection, and the Buddha says it must be experienced. In fact, you won't get off the wheel of samsara until it's experienced. We'll all experience perfection. Isan is in Islam, and it's the great perfection. Live as if Allah is in the room with you, because he is, something that Muhammad would have taught, okay? It's the great perfection. And if God's in the room with you, you're going to act perfect all the time. Siddhi is actually where I got this idea from. Siddhi in Hinduism is the idea that the great perfection was placed inside of you at birth, and it just needs to be revealed. Like Michelangelo's David gets revealed. It's inside of all of us. In Matthew 5:48, Jesus says, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. Well, that's this. All you can do is remove the barriers or the blocks to the awareness of this thing. That's it. That's all we're doing. Yours is different than mine, relativity, but the goal is the same. That's all of us. And then the Tao, verse 29, says, you are a vessel of perfection. Now, a spiritually minded person recognizes, I don't care if those are different philosophies, they all say the same thing. Every one of them is saying the same thing. All of us have inside of us the perfection. Just like the block of marble encased David, all of us have the spirit perfectly placed inside of us, and it's only there for us to reveal.